A year has passed since the start of the war in Ukraine, which began as a military operation that invaded another country. The human and material losses were enormous. What is worrying is that no one knows when this endless war will end. Russia, a gas-rich country, began the military operation with a plan to invade the capital Kiev and occupy the entire Ukrainian east, with 187,000 troops. Russia expected the war to end in a few hours, but it turned into a long conflict when the West intervened and sent aid to Ukraine, including Javelin missiles, Stinger missiles, Mars high-altitude missiles, artillery, Patriot systems and tanks. Poland also sent Leopard tanks to Ukraine for the first time. Ukraine then launched counterattacks against Russian troops and recaptured some vulnerable areas of Kharkiv in the north and south. However, the war took another turn when the entire Russian army began to fight in Ukraine, with 97% of Russian troops now fighting in Ukraine. So Russia is preparing a new army for a large-scale attack on Ukraine, through which it can't control many territories. The name of China also began to be mentioned in the Ukraine war, as US intelligence agencies received information that China was going to send weapons to Russia. The US Secretary of State issued an official warning to the Chinese diplomat Wang Yi in Munich, while the West rejected the Chinese peace offer, with criticism that China is not suitable to be a mediator. The international community should pay attention to this issue. The West's rejection of the Chinese peace offer may not be the truth, as there may be some societies that may accept it. In addition, it is of great importance to determine whether China is actually sending weapons to Russia, what types of weapons. A newspaper and an article titled The Wall Street Journal revealed that China sent weapons to Russia. Knowing all these details is necessary to understand where the war is going. So Western countries support China's military strategy, and they announced that Beijing has proposed a peace plan to stop the war machine in Ukraine. However, the United States hints that China will send weapons to Russia. At the same time, Emmanuel Macron admitted that no side can win this war and hopes to return to regular quarterly negotiations. NATO Secretary General warned China that sending weapons to China would be extremely dangerous and could escalate the war out of control. It seems that both countries share the same opinion. Russia is in negotiations with China to buy 100 fighter jets designed to carry bombs and possibly suicide planes. Comparisons are being made with the Iranian Shahab 36 aircraft, which Russia is reportedly importing from it, and 100 fighter jets from China. It is believed that Chinese aircraft will be more effective than Iranian ones. The Russians are looking for a high level of technology and are not content with the 36-month-old agreement. They are looking for a larger suicide plane, similar to Lance. Despite the success of the Spear, Russia seems to be looking for a way to take the war to another level, perhaps using large numbers of suicide planes from Iran and China. Reports from the American media indicate that China has already sent weapons to Russia, but during a recent interview, US President Joe Biden denied that China would do this. He stated that if China provided weapons, there would be serious consequences. It seems that the media campaign against China may not be accurate, given Biden's denials. The most serious point is the proposed Chinese peace initiative. China has put forward a 12-point peace plan that includes an immediate end to Russian military operations and the handover of all Russian-controlled territories to China. In return, all sanctions against Russia will be lifted, NATO ends the Cold War, there will be no intelligence operations or invasions of Russia. This would effectively put Russia under the control of China. The US president said that he would not accept a deal that puts Russia in power and is not in the interests of the United States. It is interesting to note that Britain announced its intention to submit documents to NATO outlining its plans to send more advanced weapons to Ukraine after the war. The meaning behind this announcement is unclear at present. The Wall Street Journal recently published an article suggesting that Ukraine's existence is in danger after the war. According to the article, if Russian aggression continues, Ukraine may not survive or it can be divided. The article also notes that Ukraine's military capabilities may not be enough to counter the most advanced Russian weapons, which have not yet been recognized by NATO. NATO stated that they are satisfied with Ukraine's existing arsenal, including tanks and other conventional weapons, but they may provide more advanced weapons after the war is over. France, Germany and Britain have reportedly made an offer to NATO, proposing that Ukraine enter into negotiations with Russia in the hope that such talks will lead to peace. This article claims that these three countries are urging the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, to accept these negotiations. Moreover, these countries believe that strong relations between NATO and Ukraine can push Kiev to negotiate with Moscow, even if Russian troops are absent from Ukrainian territory. The presence of the Chinese delegation further complicates the situation. According to the article, China has suggested that it will not enter Russian territory if all the territory of Ukraine currently under Russian control is ceded to China. The article argues that if Ukraine accepted this proposal, it would be reminiscent of the collapse of the Soviet Union, where a peace treaty was signed to end hostilities, only to subsequently ignite war. The article notes that the proposed Western solution is to provide Ukraine with powerful weapons that would deter Russian aggression and provide security guarantees. However, this raises the question of whether Ukraine will have the necessary weapons to defend itself if NATO does not allow it to join the alliance. Even if Russia is considering a future invasion, it is unclear whether Ukraine will have the ability to withstand such an attack. Ukraine currently has F-16 and Typhoon fighters, as well as long-range missiles, but they may not be enough to repel a determined Russian attack that is difficult to counter. The proposed Chinese offer signals the end of the Cold War era. According to the article, Ukraine will not join NATO, and NATO will not seek to join Ukraine. This proposal suggests that Ukraine will receive the weapons it needs in exchange for not joining NATO, which will enable it to defend itself. This would allow the West to accept the Chinese offer. However, the conclusions of the article should be taken with a grain of salt, as they may not necessarily reflect reality. For example, the article claims that France and Germany are putting pressure on Zelensky to negotiate with Russia, but Zelensky himself expressed a desire to meet with the Chinese president to discuss a peace treaty. This suggests that Zelensky is under great pressure to make decisions that may not be in the interests of Ukraine. Ultimately, the situation is complex and requires careful consideration. The West should assess the Chinese threat and carefully evaluate their proposals. The possible consequences of any decisions taken must be carefully weighed, as they can have long-term repercussions on the survival of Ukraine and the global geopolitical system. Therefore, tensions between Russia, China and the Western world are high, with the possibility of using large numbers of suicide planes in the conflict. The proposed Chinese peace initiative could have far-reaching consequences, since it puts Russia under the control of China and is not perceived as being in the interests of the United States. The situation remains uncertain, as reports from the media sometimes contradict the statements of officials.